Welcome back to the Miraculous Mamas podcast. I'm your host, Elizabeth Joy, and we believe in empowering people through storytelling and education. And I'm really excited about today's episode. If you missed last week's, go back and listen. We have on Shannon Perkins, and she tells her birth stories, and it's just fun. I love birth story episodes. They are one of my favorites. Obviously, I love birth work if I work as a doula, and so it was just cool hearing her stories and just how everything unfolds so differently for every single person. Her plan did not go according to the plan she wanted, but she still ended up having empowering births either way. So definitely go back and listen. Today we have on Dr. Mona Delahooke, and I'm really excited to talk to her because it's all about childhood psychology, what's actually happening in a child's mind when they are throwing a tantrum. And this episode's just right in line with my life right now with an 18-month-old who has a new sense of independence and really wants to have things her way, really is experiencing big emotions. So I ask her lots of questions because we're figuring it out as we go, just like everybody else. And so we're like, wait, this is new. What do we do about this? So it was really good to talk to her. Before you dive in, if you're listening, make sure that you leave us a review, subscribe, share. That's the best way to get the podcast out there, to spread the episodes, and the best way to support our show. So make sure that you are doing that. Also, if you follow me on social media, you know that I had the baby. I'm holding baby Tula right now. She is snoozing away in my arms. However, she did not snooze away last night. So if I'm sounding a little tired today, it's because I have not slept. We're back in that season of life, but we're really excited. I did record a bunch of episodes so that I could have some maternity leave. So I will be hopping on here just to kind of do the introductions to the episodes and the ending of them. But I'm going to just use the interviews that I've been recording and storing up just so I can spend more time with the family and bonding. And Vito and I will be on here soon to share the birth story. We just need some more time to process everything. It was very different from our experience with Jovi. So we're excited to share it, but we're still like, oh my gosh, I forgot that this thing happened and that thing happened. And I'm sure like when we record it, we'll probably leave out some details, but I'll try to maybe start writing things down as they're coming back to me. But yeah, we're just trying to enjoy our little family, to still process everything, and to just soak in this new time, especially since I have family in town helping. Like this morning, well, my mom's staying with us, and then my dad's coming, my sister's coming, and I have family just kind of helping out, which is great. I want to take advantage of that. And then like this morning, Vito took Jovi over to his mom's house, just to hang out, get out of the house, and just to give us some time at home to rest, nap, relax. So everybody's working as a team here to make sure everybody's feeling okay and doing all right, which is awesome. All right, we're going to go ahead and dive into today's episode. I know that you are going to love it. All right, everyone, this podcast is coming at a perfect time in my life as Jovi has started to throw temper tantrums. And I honestly am just like, what do I do as she's throwing herself on the floor because I cut her grape in half instead of left it whole. So a little kid starting to experience big emotions and opinions. And today I have on Dr. Mona Delahooke, and she is amazing. She just wrote a new book about how to stop managing behavior and start raising joyful, resilient kids, which is really cool. She's a licensed clinical psychologist with tons of experience caring for children and their families, and her focus is on children. And so I'm really excited to dive into this topic with her today. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me, Liz. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah. Well, like I said, my daughter's 18 months and just really starting to experience those big emotions of like, right now she's obsessed with geese. We have geese outside where I live, And sometimes we'll show her like geese videos. And then when it's time to be done, it's like full on meltdown. She wants more geese, like starting to like manage these big emotions. And I want to support her through it because I know that she's not like, oh, I'm going to throw this temper tantrum. She's just starting to experience things that she never has before. So I need to learn how to like, where do the boundaries come in? How do I support her emotionally? And so I was like, oh, perfect. I'll just talk to Mona about it today.
The flavor of the month for me. That is my whole life. And first of all, just to take a deep exhale and realize how hard it is when our little ones come into these big emotions, right? And I know it's been called different things like the terrible twos or the, terrific threes, but I think that we really need to shift the lens. And once we understand what's going on underneath the hood, they're not terrible anymore. They are amazing and expected, and we know what to do with them. So, and I just chuckled when you said this was the perfect example for a toddler tantrum, cutting the grape in half instead of like in four, or leaving it whole and you cut it in half. And when you cut it in half, you put it on the plate wrong, or it's the wrong color plate. Oh no! And then all of a sudden my world falls apart and I'm crying or pushing you or fussing or screaming. Yeah. So how about if I give a little science behind what's going on?
Yeah, I would love that. And I would love for you, I know I just kind of like dove into it, but just tell us a little bit more about you and then, dive into the science of what's happening.
Perfect. Yeah. Because the science leads us to the practical on exactly what to do and say. So, so I've been a child psychologist for a long time, almost 3 decades. And I'm a mom of 3, and I have a 2-year-old granddaughter who's my best friend in the world, and I hang out with. Thankfully, they live close by. So I'm working with my specialty is infant and toddler mental health. And believe it or not, there is such a specialty where it's really just not analyzing little infants' brains, but understanding development, how the brain and body develop. So that's my specialty. So I've had the great fortune of playing with families with infants and toddlers and older children for 30 years. Play is my favorite thing to do. And alongside, I was very lucky to study with neuroscientists who really have helped me understand why behaviors are there, what they mean, and why they are necessary for a child's development. So I just feel really lucky that I get to do the kind of work that I love, because I was on the road to maybe trying to have 10 children. And then my husband and I realized, no, don't have 10 children. Just work with children your whole life.
Yeah. It definitely changes once you start having them.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. We are well into the new year, which means that it's time to leave behind the things that do not serve you, like overdraft fees. When your checking account balance is running low, the last thing that you need is an overdraft fee. But with Chime, an award-winning app and debit card, you can save that hard-earned paper without paying overdraft fees. Eligible members can overdraft up to $200 on debit card purchases and cash withdrawals with absolutely no overdraft fees. Make your first good decision in 2022 and join over 10 million people using Chime. Sign up takes only 2 minutes and doesn't affect your credit score. Get started at chime.com/mamas. That's chime.com/mamas. Banking services provided by and debit card issued by the Bancorp Bank or Stride Bank N.A., members FDIC. Eligibility requirements and overdraft limits apply. Overdraft only applies to debit card purchases and cash withdrawals. Limit starts at $20 and may be increased up to $200 by Chime. See chime.com/spotme. Well, that's awesome that you were able to, like you said, work along neuroscientists and all of that, because I think the hard thing that people kind of grasp, and even me until like I had my own kids, like honestly, when I would see other people's kids, I was like, like,
totally.
gee, like, okay, your kids suck, kind of. Just being honest.
That won't happen to me. when I'm a parent one day. Yeah.
Right. It's like, geez, get a grip, but then you have your own kids. And one thing that I just remember being in this season, hearing a lot more from other people is that, these little kids are humans too. And we tend to treat kids as like second-class citizens. Like, you're a 1-year-old, but you should be behaving like a 30-year-old. And
Right.
it's like, you're 1 year old and you are a fully human person. You are a human being and you are going to experience these different things. So I feel like that's been a big mental shift for me, recognizing that, then having my own daughter and being like, okay, like, I have days where I have meltdowns and I'm off. I can't expect a 1.5-year-old to be perfect all the time.
It's so true. It's so true. They are perfectly formed, shaped little humans, right? They look like us and they start to talk so soon and they can even walk and talk. And we're like, oh my gosh, they're a little adult. But that's what we forget. They have all the component parts. They have all the fingers and toes. And yet what they don't have is the life experience that builds the brain development. They have a small fraction of what we have in terms of those, what we call neural pathways, but just think of it as life experience. And the way you develop the ability to be an adult one day and say, I'm sorry, I'd rather have my grape cut in half rather than have a complete emotional breakdown about it, is that experience. We can't expect our little ones to have the emotional and behavioral control that we do. And there was actually a study on that, a huge study, and it's most parents, a majority of parents believe that toddlers should have more emotional and behavioral control than they do. And that study was entitled The Expectation Gap. The expectation gap is that we're expecting children to be able to do things that they can't do. And that's no blame or shame for any parent, believe me, because everyone is kind of under the expectation gap. It's even preschool teachers and many therapists. So I guess the first thing I'll say is mommies and daddies, caregivers, grandparents, everybody, just have so much compassion for yourself, because little bodies and brains, what's called neurodevelopment, isn't very well disseminated in public knowledge yet. And that's why I wrote Brain Body Parenting, because once we understand why that behavior is there, it opens up a whole new realm of compassion, A, and B, we won't be thinking we're bad. We're like doing it wrong. Like, I have a behavior problem here, or I better nip this in the bud. Otherwise my kid's going to be, kicked out of kindergarten or high school. That's how I felt before I knew this stuff. So it's very interesting. So maybe let me just talk about like those meltdowns that toddler has. You have an 18-month-old. Mm-hmm. I have a 2-year-old that I'm seeing every day and witnessing every day. What happens when they don't get an expectation met? So inside of their little minds, they've only had a few trips around the block. We've had millions. They've had hundreds or thousands. What does that mean? The way our brains work is that it predicts what's going to happen next based on our past experiences. For toddlers, they think that what's inside of their mind is automatically in yours. So when you cut the grape in half and they were expecting a whole grape, that's called a prediction error. A prediction error is when her brain is thinking one thing and something else happens. What does that do to a toddler's body? It sends them into distress. Now, it's an expected distress. We need to remain sturdy when that happens. But that prediction error is due to the fact that they're little. Mm-hmm. When they're older, what they'll be able to do is say something like, "Oh, Mommy, could you please leave it whole? I want my play knife to cut it in half myself." Okay, that's coming down the pike. But for now, all they know is that they don't know anything. They don't throw the tantrum. The tantrum throws them. Their body goes into this invisible pathway and they don't know it. All of a sudden, all they know is they're upset and they're crying. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of some of the science behind these really quick shifts in behavior that we see in toddlers. And once you understand that it's due to this expected prediction error, then we don't have to call them terrible twos anymore. We can call them terrific twos. Like, oh, good. They're working out that muscle. And what do? Wow. We go from being disciplinarians and getting mad at them for being so extra to, oh my goodness, you were expecting a whole grape and you got a half. Oh, my problem here. And all of a sudden the child feels seen and heard. They're like, yeah, I want the whole grape. Yes, you did, sweetheart. Yes, you did. I didn't know that. But here, let's go on. Hey, want to go check the mail with me? Want to go play with teddy bear, polar bear? Come on. And there you go. They get off the dime easy as they get on it, depending on your child, of course, and depending on how quickly they can recover from those mishaps. They're called ruptures, mini ruptures in the experience of being a toddler.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, she seems pretty easily distractible after.
That's great. Some are and some aren't. That's so cool. Like you can be, well, okay, on to the next thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, it's so robust to have this, you want to go home from the park and you need to go home from the park. It's time to leave the park. Mm-hmm. The brain is expecting to stay at the park because it's fun. Oh no. How do I put my mind around this? You don't. The body goes into a stressed response, and then it's our job to stay calm and let them see. We get it. This is so hard. Oh my goodness, this is hard. But we got to go.
Right.
So we don't let them lead. We lead, but we can lead with empathy and with this what's called emotional attunement, mm-hmm. where we're actually giving them a lot of our own compassion, our own, like, I see you, this is hard. And then maintaining our own parenthood and doing what we know is best for the child. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. All right. As I said in the beginning of the episode, our new baby has arrived. So that means that I am up a lot in the middle of the night, feeding her, and I need to keep myself awake. So I've been playing Best Fiends in the middle of the night, at midnight, 2 a.m., 4 a.m., 6 a.m., all of the times. I've been playing Best Fiends. I've been playing the game for a long time now. I love it, but this is actually giving me some more time to conquer some levels and crush them. As I've mentioned before, I love doing the little side levels. Right now I'm doing one for the character Howie, and you have to defeat 30 levels in order to win the next thing. So I'm kind of hooked on the side challenges right now, but I'll be up at 2 a.m. nursing Tula, playing Best Fiends and keeping myself awake and challenging my brain a little bit because I love doing puzzles and solving and everything like that. And it's a mobile puzzle game that anyone can download and play, whether you have a few minutes or a few hours. Best Fiends is the perfect puzzle game to lose yourself in because you're having so much fun. Download Best Fiends free today on the App Store or Google Play. That's friends without the R, Best Fiends. I would love to ask, because obviously, my daughter's so young. I know that she doesn't, really understand. Is there, an age where they do understand? Because, another thing she has started to do is hitting. Yeah. And so, we take her hands. I'm like, no, you be gentle with your hands and try to show her. But there does come an age where a kid knows I'm not supposed to hit and I'm going to hit anyways. Like how, like, is there like an age cutoff for that? Or like, you know, like how do parents navigate that? Like when it turns from like your tantrums and you're growing to just like aggressiveness or outrage, or do you understand what I'm trying to ask? I'm not sure if I'm wording it right. Okay.
No, it's a really good question. And I wish there was an age that everyone gets it, but unfortunately development doesn't work that way. It's based on each child's developmental age. So there's the difference between a chronological age and a developmental age. That what you're describing is, a fancy word for it is inhibitory control, but what it is self-control, right? Self-regulation, that ability to control what's coming out of my mouth or through my body, okay? That self-regulation is a developmental project that actually 18-month-olds are on just like 1% of it, or less than 1%. It's actually starts at 2 to 3 years old. So your little one is ahead, behind that curve. So it starts at around 2 to 3 years old, and it continues throughout life. It continues really, it's maturing even through teenagerhood. So every child is different on that self-control, but we do know that children who have had attuned care from parents who are what's called responsive to their emotions develop better self-control than children whose parents were dismissive of their emotions or just simply punish them for having these big reactions, which we now know are very expected and that they are unavoidable because the child doesn't have the structure. It doesn't have the framework to control their impulses yet. That builds and develops every year. But it's still, as you know, because you were a teenager once and your friends, it kind of dips up again in teenagerhood because then we are not as well controlled as we were when we were 10 even. Development is so incredible. It's so amazing and it can be terrifying for parents. Let me just say, that's my clinical hat. But when I put my mom hat on, I mean, oh my gosh, like, please. Mm-hmm. Parenting is hard work. It involves our hearts and our souls and it's confusing. And there's so much on the line. We really want to get it right. So we need to, I think our best tool is self-compassion, is making sure we be gentle on yourself. You're doing the best you can. Okay, mama, take a breath. It's okay. It's okay. You're trying. This is hard. Mm-hmm. Toddlers are hard. Older children are hard. And then we recalibrate and we come back and we fix those ruptures and we play, and children are also very, very resilient. That's how humans are made.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Definitely resilient for sure. So I feel like kind of my generation growing up, I'm in my mid-30s, and like my siblings, it was, you don't act that way. You know, like I grew up in a very loving home. Like I never felt, I was a pretty good kid. I didn't get in very much trouble growing up. But like, I know that if we were somewhere acting out, like my parents just had to give me a look and I was like, oh crap, I gotta get it together. And it just kind of seems like that's not really the norm these days.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, well, I want to raise my kids to know how to behave in certain environments, but also not like, to have more conversations. Like I felt like there was just like a lot of things not talked about in my home. It was just kind of like you listen and that's it. So like where I'm like, hey, like, how are you feeling? What's going on? Like I want to open those conversations, but also like, it just seems like it's madness out there these days. But also room to know that these little humans have emotions and they're gonna, like I said, not behave perfectly all the time. I'm, 35 and I have days where I'm don't behave perfectly, not even close. That's every day, actually, you know?
Hey, same. And I'm almost double your age, you know? So yeah, like.
Right. So it's like, how do you raise like respectful young children, but also, you know, be able to give them space or room or hold space for them when they are experiencing different things?
Liz, I'm so glad you brought that up, because I think that is what actually faced my generation and yours in parenting. Because, like you said, I believe our parents did the best they could with the information they had, right? Mm-hmm. But I remember the look. I remember even things like if I'd be saying something like, because I was super shy and like, I'm afraid I don't want to go to school or something like that. My mom would have said, "Oh, there's nothing to worry about. Don't be silly. School's fine." And I have an adorable mom, but it seemed like their generation, like, we're caught in this piece of how we were raised, like kind of like be respectful above all, and totally family values I think are really important. But there's a difference between be respectful and allowing a child to be seen, to have their emotions seen below the behaviors, beyond the behaviors, right? And that's the gift we have now, is that we know that behaviors are just a signal. They are not the real deal. They're a signal of what's going on inside of our children's brains and bodies, and their hearts. So let's just say a child says, "I hate you, Mommy." Right? Okay. A really hard thing to hear from a parent. But our parents' generation may have said something like, "You may not talk that way to me, young lady," and give the look, right? This generation has the opportunity to pause momentarily, go, is her nervous system in distress or calm? It's in distress. What she just said is because she's feeling a threat inside of her body. It's not because she hates me. She's under stress. She's having a stress behavior, not a misbehavior. That is the gift of Parenting 2.0, in my opinion, of what I'm promoting. And that is, we look beyond the behavior to what's underlying, and we can still maintain our family values, our authority, the respect. Because I'm with you. I think it's important, in my family at least, my spouse and I believed that it was important to have a respectful family, and how our children were allowed to speak to us and to others, and to respect the humanity of other people. But the cool thing is you can have that and also be really empathic to the child at the same time. Mm-hmm. So I'm really glad you brought up that question. I think that automatic reaction, I know for me, like especially when one of my children did something that felt disrespectful, I was automatically triggered to like clamp down on them, because I want them to be good humans and I want them to behave well. So I have a lot of compassion for that. We're kind of in this middle space of the emotional resonation, like you're seeing your child. But then on the other hand, you're like, but heck, I'm the parent. Mm-hmm. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I feel like that's like where the struggle is, of wanting to hold that space. Because like you were saying, it is completely like we were like taught you have to behave this way, but not really validated in what we were actually experiencing or feeling. And so I do believe that that's really important. But I also, like, a huge value for us is, like you were saying, the respect. And obviously our kids are going to mouth off to us. Like, we're not naive, like we know that
and they're not clones of us. So they are going to have different opinions, right? Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Like, we know this. But it's a lot more like out in the world. I just see a lot more that kids like don't respect their teachers. They don't, my mom was a teacher for
30 plus years, and she just like saw it over the years of kids just being awful in school. So like not respecting their teachers, not, respecting your family or whatever it is. And I do think that there's a lot of room in there too. Like our generation, you also didn't have a say in like, okay, well, you have to go hug everyone goodbye. And to me, like, I'm like, if she, if Jovi, I'm not going to force her to like hug and kiss people. I want to teach her to trust her intuition. If she doesn't feel like hugging everyone, be like, okay, just say goodbye. Like you don't have to do it every time. I don't believe in that. But still being respectful, because it's just like the way that you see kids talking to their aunts and uncles today. I never would have had the audacity to like say something like that to my aunt. Like I would have been terrified. So it's like, where's the middle ground?
Yes, absolutely. It is. Oh, it's really, it's those automatic, we get triggered by our children's behaviors in an automatic subconscious way. Like we get these, as you know, like your child can do something and then you immediately feel a flush. Like sometimes it's like you feel your heart's going a little bit faster. You're feeling like you're breathing a little faster. It's like, oh, you feel like, we call that the red zone. We're feeling kind of red. And that's a pretty good signal to us that it's triggering something in us, right? And triggering something that is probably something we're trying to work out on a combination of how we were raised and felt and seen as children. Again, by well-meaning parents, but many of us didn't have our emotions properly aired out so that they could be seen and felt, so that we developed a little bit of a turtle shell, like certain types of more negative emotions are bad and positive ones are good. And there's a big difference between not respecting people, but also realizing that feeling angry or jealous or scared, those more negative emotions are just as human and expected and valid as feeling happy and cheerful and being a good caretaker and all that. And yet in our schools, children are rewarded really in preschool and early education for being like getting sticker charts for being quote unquote good. And to me, compliant doesn't necessarily mean mentally healthy. In my practice, I've seen so many children over the years with high levels of anxiety who didn't get to see those underpinnings, those human things, and let them breathe. Yes, you're scared. It's scary sometimes. And sure, it's hard having a sibling. This is hard sharing mommy or daddy. I mean, just letting those natural emotions that are not positive have some air. And I think that's a challenge for parents, because we might think that it's going to be, our child will start to act that way if we validate those negative emotions, but it's actually the opposite.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I just remember like when we were having our kid, because I work as a birth doula, so I'm like, I know so much about birth, like pregnancy, birth, a little bit about postpartum. I definitely learned a lot more through my experience, but I'm like, they just let you take home this kid, and now you're keeping them alive, but then you parent them. I'm like, I feel like you're like, we're not even necessarily, I mean, Jovi's only a year and a half, so I feel like we're barely parenting, like we're just keeping her alive still.
Yes. So yeah, you're doing a lot of physical care. Yeah.
I mean, we play games, we do like a lot of stuff like that, but I'm like, man, parenting just sounds so exhausting and so hard. And again, there's not like, you can take so many different courses or whatever on it. Everybody's going to have a different approach, but unless you understand, that's why I love the work you're doing. Unless you understand like what's happening underneath, like how can you really do a good job, I guess?
Yeah, I am so with you on that. Like my dream is that to graduate from high school, everyone needs like a parenting 101, the basics of what we now know. We know so much more now than we knew 100 years ago or 50 years ago when our high school courses were set, right? Just the basics of what behaviors mean, of what's going on inside the nervous system. And yes, that we even have a nervous system. Honestly, when you get that little baby and they wheel you out, or you go home from birth center, or you have the baby at home, the instruction manual doesn't come with the baby. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, have fun. And then the hard part starts. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's so, you get this beautiful ability to help babies into the world and help the mommy and daddy during the birth process and prepare for the birth and have the birth they envisioned if they can. But then what about raising the child? Mm-hmm. We're left to our own devices, and it's a trip. It's like almost defies words.
Mm-hmm. I always say motherhood is a trip. I always say that because I'm like, this is definitely the wildest ride I've been on. And even with the triggers, like you're saying, like I noticed when I get triggered, like there's things in my life that I've had to work on because I know it's not my daughter. Like, like if you're getting angry at a 1-year-old, like she didn't make you mad. You're mad because you have stuff that you need to work through in your own life.
That's so beautiful. And yeah, and we all do. No parent doesn't get triggered. So we all get triggered. But the cool thing is, like, what you did is you reframed it with self-awareness. Like, mm-hmm. You were like, okay, this is a 1-year-old. It's interesting. What can I learn about me from this? And I think that's where we have to treat ourselves really gently, because it's funny that especially mothers tend to be really judgmental of ourselves. Mm-hmm. And I think just being gentle with, like, even admitting that I'm having a negative feeling, or like, okay, this may be something about me, that's really brave and healthy and good. When we think it's about the baby, or when we don't, or when we seal those tender sides of us off that were hurt as a child, then we may be more harsh with our children than we'd want to be. So I think that's really lovely that you can give that to parents, that model that you just did. It's like, this is interesting. What is this? What can I learn about me from this? Mm-hmm. That's beautiful.
Yeah, well, I think parenting is like your biggest opportunity, like to almost peer into your own soul. Like it brings out everything. And like I said, it's not even parenting. It was even those first few months postpartum of like, holy crap, I know I'm getting triggered. I know it's nothing like she did. Like, What is coming up? Like, where's this anger coming from? Like, yes. There's a source, and it's not my baby. It's not this tiny human. It's something that is making, because I would ask myself, I'm like, what, you're angry because your baby is hungry again? No, you're not. Like, like you're angry because of something else that's going on.
Yes. And sometimes that something else is just you're done. Your body has given so much. You're not getting good sleep. If you're nursing or not, everything's topsy-turvy. And that crying because they need another feeding could be enough to throw you over the edge. That's a physiological response too. That means the battery needs charging, and the battery is like almost dead. Mm-hmm. And that happens in the first few months. That's like, I dreaded the first few months, mostly because of the sleep disruption, because I have a very strong need for uninterrupted sleep in my physical body. Mm-hmm. And there were times when it just felt physically painful to get up. And that's only one of the changes, as you know, that we have to go through physically as moms.
Right. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. It's definitely hard. But I think even now, like, let's say Jovi's like just throwing a tantrum and she throws herself on the floor, and then I'm getting upset. It's like, you're upset because your 1-year-old threw themselves on the floor. Like, no, you're upset because like you were saying earlier, like you want your kids to be good humans. You don't like, what if she goes to school and this is how she behaves? Like, then I look like a horrible person or whatever's coming up. It's like, you're upset because your 1-year-old who has no idea what's going on, like threw themselves on the floor. Like, that's really why you're mad at a 1-year-old. Like, no, there's something else going on.
Our brains work so fast to tell us all these different stories. Like you said, our brain's like, okay, what is this going to mean for her in a couple years? What does this mean about me? Da 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 da. You know, I've got these stories we tell ourselves like ramp up in our heads, really like instantaneously. So yeah. But the question is the curiosity. I think is one of our biggest allies as parents, is that curiosity, like, interesting. Yeah. I'm getting mad at a 1-year-old for crying, which we know 1-year-olds cry. I'm curious. What does this say that I need right now? What does this say about what I need in the moment? Or maybe what's getting triggered in me as a human? Mm-hmm. With curiosity, with gentleness, not with I'm failing as a mother or something like that, but with such curiosity and gentleness, so that we, like you said, our children bring us to places that you may never visit unless you're a parent. And that's an opportunity as well as high stakes. But it's a great opportunity.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I went down that spiral recently. We were with a bunch of family over at my in-laws' house, and my daughter just like started having a tantrum, like screaming, whatever, throwing herself down. And I took her upstairs and cuddled her, and she wanted to nurse. And I've been trying to like set boundaries around it because my second is due any day now. And I'm trying to like I'm not ready to completely wean her, but just not anywhere, anytime. Like just trying to set boundaries around that. And that's been very hard for me. I feel like I can't say no because it's a source of comfort. It's, all these different things for her. So we were with a bunch of family, and then my daughter's throwing a tantrum. Then she's asking for the boob. And so I take her upstairs and I just nurse her and we cuddle. And I immediately start like telling myself like, they all probably think that I'm a horrible mom because my 1.5-year-old's screaming, which they do. Like they're probably like, control your child, and she's too old to be nursing, and she shouldn't be asking for that anyways, and like all these different stories that I'm just making up in my head. And then I'm like, every single person here has kids. They all know that 1.5-year-olds are going, this is going to happen. It was hard though. Like I definitely started like going down that spiral, and I'm like, that's like where those triggers come from. Like even when people aren't around, cause it's like, if she's doing this at home, then when she's in public, she's, whatever. And then they're going to think, geez, what I used to think, get a grip on your kid.
Yes. Oh, I love that narration. It's so right on. And we all do it, right? I love that. You're up there in that room and just, your mind is really quick. So you're like, what is so-and-so thinking, what they're all thinking? And, it's so hard. It's such a burden. And actually, there's been quite a few studies that show also that parents feel judged by others most of the time. So we're in good company when we feel judged. And whether or not other people are judging, who knows? But we feel it, and that's what matters. But then reframing it as you did, like then in your mind you're going, but wait, all of these people are parents. And then reframing it like, well, maybe they're not all judging me. Maybe they're all parents, and maybe on some level they understand. But even if they don't, I'm trusting my instincts right here. Mm-hmm. My Jovi knows that I've got her back. And I felt that she needed me, and it helped her. It helped calm her at that moment. And I'm going to stand by my instinct as a mom and kind of push back on those thoughts of judgment. But again, I think it's so universal. We do a number on ourselves, and those stories come back because we are judged a lot. We are. Like you did, like before we have kids, people judge. But then there's people in other generations or people who think that discipline is the only way. They'll look at you like, oh, you're just maybe coddling or you're spoiling. Those older notions do come in. So,
I mean, oh, go ahead.
No, I just saying I'm so glad we could have this conversation, because I think the more we talk about it, the less judgmental of ourselves we will be, and we'll know we're not alone. We're not alone in these thoughts of, am I doing it right? What are other people thinking? What is the right way to go? And that's why I think that understanding human, just a little bit about the human nervous system becomes a new guide for us, rather than 100-year-old ideas like children should be seen and not heard, right? That came from probably 500 years ago or thousands of years ago to the modern day, where we understand that behaviors are valuable. Our children's our own. And when we look at them without judgment and with a lot of attention and gentleness, our kids benefit too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I've loved talking with you, because I feel like I just continue to learn so much on this parenting journey, and that I've had to completely change views and humble myself because of some of the old thinking that I even had before I had kids. And I remember at one point my husband, like, I've always wanted children. We both have always wanted a big family. But he was like, but you don't like kids. I'm like, yes, I do. I'm like, maybe not from like 2 to 8.
I love that.
Like, maybe not, maybe not between those ages, but right. I do like them. But I feel like now, like, especially having my own kid and just interviewing people like you and just learning and surrounding myself with resources, I'm like, oh, well, these kids are being kids, and it is different when they're your own, and you do start to like see that, but then you also start to have the empathy and compassion for other people's kids. Not that I was rude before. I come from a huge family. I have 12 nieces and nephews. I always babysat them growing up. Like, I liked kids, but I would just be like, whatever, kind of about it. And now I'm like, oh, this 5-year-old is having a human experience, and, they're not trying to be malicious or whatever. Like, you have to teach them some boundaries, and then hold that space for their experience, and just trying to like be a lot more compassionate. And now when I see people whose kids are melting down in stores, I'm like, oh man, be with that mama. Like, I'm not, I don't feel
awesome.
I don't feel judgmental toward it, because I'm like, yep, we'll be there very soon.
I love that, Liz.
So it's definitely helped me a lot. But before we wrap up, I would love for you just to tell us a little bit more about your book and what people are going to find in it.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. So the book is called Brain Body Parenting, How to Stop Managing Behaviors and Start Raising Joyful, Resilient Kids. And that's a subtitle. People can find out more about it. Oh, it's available pretty much everywhere for pre-sale, Amazon and Barnes & Noble, Target, and even Walmart, I think. And it's coming out on March 15th. So it's available for pre-order now. And you can find out more on my website, monadelahooke.com, and on Facebook and Instagram at Dr. Mona Delahooke.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. I would like to, we won't get into it now, but like, I love the end part of starting to raising joyful and resilient kids, because I feel like that joyful part is super important to teach as well.
I really do. And especially now that we have hopefully are coming out into a safer world and the end of some sort of pandemic, we need more joy. We need more laughter, more play. And it's been a rough time. So thank you again for having me on. And your little girl is so lucky to have you as her mama.
Oh, thank you so much. That means a lot. Yes. Thank you so much for your time, your energy, and your expertise today.
Great. Stay in touch. Thank you.
I
All right. I hope that you got as much out of that episode as I did. I love talking to her and picking her brain and asking her questions and being like, wait, are we doing this right? When am I supposed to do this? What does this mean? And like I said, I mean, Jovi's she's in it right now. I mean, it's not like all the time, but she definitely has like days. Like there was a morning last week where I was like, wow, this is just a tantrum morning, just full of meltdowns. I had like posted something on Instagram about how like I can no longer cut her cheese. Like she has to eat it off the block of cheese now. And just little things like that where it's like, oh, okay, so you have an opinion about how your cheese is cut now. I didn't know that was a thing. But you definitely learn. And I think that you have a lot more compassion for yourself and then for other parents. Like I said in the episode, I'm like, wow, like, you know, I think before anybody becomes parents, like you think, oh, my kids won't do that. And I definitely had that to some degree, but I also knew like it'll happen. Kids are going to be kids. But now that like I'm in it, I'm like, oh, okay. I get it so much more now that, you know, my daughter's in that stage and that you're experiencing it, that you know that it's not like her being bad or her disobeying. Like she's 18 months. She's like figuring things out, and the tantrums are a part of that. It's like this thing in their mind where they're like, you know, can't eat sliced cheese. And so there's a meltdown. But yeah, make sure that you look out for Mona Delahooke's book and grab that. She's awesome. She does a lot of great work. And then she left her email, which I'll leave in the notes as well, so you can reach out to her. All right. Love you guys. I hope that you're having a great week, a great month. We are officially in March, and St. Patrick's Day, and it's Women's History Month. So go women. And we will talk to you next week.
If you want to be the most interesting person at the cocktail party, well, hop on over and listen to the Brain Candy podcast.
Our award-winning content will have you laughing while you're learning.
We read all the best articles, books, and studies, and keep up with new TV shows, documentaries, and pop culture. And then we cram it all into 2 shows a week.
Conspiracy theories, cannibal rabbits, unsolved mysteries, the history of the Walkman. There's something for everyone.
The Brain Candy podcast. Find our link in the show notes.
Or simply search for the Brain Candy podcast on your podcast app.